Now, the World Economic Forum wrapped up this weekend, and Team South Africa hope to deliver a very resolute message that we are indeed open for business and investment as an emerging economy, despite the many challenges like our energy crisis, as well as other self-inflicted social ills, as well as economic ills. Now, the meeting took place against the most complicated geopolitical as well as geo-economic backdrop of the last few decades. And to help us unpack these proceedings and give us a first-hand account, we're very pleased to welcome in studio Professor Bonang Mohale, Chancellor of the Free State University, Professor of Practice at the Johannesburg Business School, as well as Chairman of the Bidvest Group, among his many hats. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. What a pleasure. Look, I know you flew out throughout the night to be with us this afternoon. Give us a general overview as well as general consensus of how the WEF actually commenced this year.
But for me, leadership is not just about theoretically saying we're open for business. It's about what can we extract as learnings from what we saw in Davos. So for me personally, this being my 21st WEF in Davos, what I came with is the fact that here is this village that I visited for the first time that has transformed itself into a proper town just in 54 years, driven by the dream of just one man, a German-born engineer and economist, Professor Klaus Schwab. What he wanted was really to give governments and business people a place of tranquility where they can be away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. What has actually transpired is that now Davos has inserted itself firmly and forcefully into being the center of the world. This, of course, brings about a very complex interplay between the environment and the economy for the benefit of the local people. By hosting such a prestigious event, Davos has now managed to feed its own people.
Absolutely,
it has
injected the economy.
Yes, it has increased tourism and hospitality. Now there are hotels, there are chauffeurs, there are taxi owners, but also there are farmers who cook the food that we eat. There's promotional materials. The entire industry is there. But that tourism used to be only in January, mostly around skiing. Now it's all year round. So when there is 200, let's say 2,800 people who are delegates themselves, most of the heads of state will come with a delegation of 10. And there were 60 heads of state. There were 40 foreign ministers, but also 10 of them actually came from the continent of Africa. But there was 1,600 business people, academia, youth, NGOs, all of them just coming together to help us solve some of the intractable problems of the world.
But speaking about that, I mean, let's talk about that. A lot of people are asking, what is the legitimacy of the WEF, particularly in South Africa? Why do we need to be part of such proceedings as well as sittings?
First, it's 120 countries that were there. This one was 10% bigger than the same period last year. It started on Monday. But on Sunday, the Ukrainian president, Vladimir Zelensky, could have chosen 222 countries and locations. He chose to be in Davos to make an announcement that they've commenced negotiation talks around his 10-point peace plan that has been selling. Why would he choose Davos? For me, I think it speaks to the heart of what this is about. And the theme, I think, is actually quite incisive because it talks about rebuilding trust. In theory, it says Davos used to have the trust, it lost it, now they are rebuilding it. They could be talking about South Africa. And the 4 tracks, the first talks about this notion of security and collaboration. The second talks about the need for growth and jobs for the new era. The third is artificial intelligence, because this is the world of technology. And then lastly, it talks about climate, about nature and energy, because we know that energy is the 4th means of production. And if energy is well managed, the people can indeed thrive.
And Prof, as we're actually coming to that point, I mean, we know that with Team South Africa at the top of the agenda, I spoke to Mr. Kaz Kuvedia at the launch of the proceedings, and he was saying that at the top of the agenda of Team South Africa was the current energy crisis that we're experiencing in South Africa. I mean, we know that it has had a severe impact on businesses, causing a ripple effect. There's job losses and a low productivity level. So talk to us about some of the solutions that were tabled, even though there is already a report that has been tabled in South Africa around the energy mix. How are you going to try and resolve the issue, the energy crisis in South Africa, even though there's been a report that says load shedding might be with us for 51 years, but there are other types of energy that might be introduced into the sector?
So first, being at the World Economic Forum, it's actually quite significant, because here gathers the top 1% of the wealthiest in the world. If anybody can help us to invest in this country on renewals, etc., but also they bring with it money. So this is ultra high net worth individuals. To give you an example, of the top 10 companies in the world, 7 of them are owned by 5 people that were there. So it just gives you an indication. But I think as South Africans, we need to be restless when we are told that load shedding might be with us for another 51 years.
Yeah.
Because Van den Bijl built this Eskom. And when he built it with IDC and ISCOR. And he did it with 19,000 people. At our height, we went up to 48,000 people. Nameplate generation capacity is 56 gigawatt.
Yeah.
Now, at the moment, we're not, on the best day, getting 27 gigawatts. Therefore, I think we shouldn't accept it. One, because for 16 years now, we've been unable to solve this load shedding that started in February of 2008.
Yeah.
I mean, how can we take ourselves seriously that we are ready to govern ourselves, let alone govern others, when in 16 years we can't solve load shedding? And also what breaks one's heart is because we have spent the most amount of money in the world trying to build new generation capacity. We are the 4th largest utility in the world. We decide to build not 1, but 3 coal-fired power stations, 2 plus hydro Ingula in Medupi and Kusile. The initial cost was 150 billion. We have spent more than 350 billion. We should have completed it in 2016. It's still not complete. Each was supposed to give us 9.6 gigawatt. But
we're not getting there.
Yes, it's not even giving us that capacity. But also, I think what should break our heart is that each time we go up to stage 6 load shedding, we lose 4 billion rands a day.
Per day.
Between stages, it's 500 million. We have lost an entire 2 percentage points in the economy. So the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, together with CSIR, does a piece of work, and they measure the cost of unserved electricity. In 2022 audited figures, this puts the figure at about 6.4 gigawatt. At 80 rand per gigawatt, we have lost 570 billion rand just in 1 year.
And now, what does this do to the GDP?
Exactly. And the population is growing at 1.5. So it means ordinary South Africans, Ntla and Bonang, are actually going backwards because both our disposable income and discretionary purchasing power is buying less this year compared to the same period last year. That's why the need for us to come together in Davos and try and say, but what is it that we can do? But also to send a message that says, okay, we are open for business.
Absolutely.
When you started to set at the most difficult of times, because yes, there's load shedding, there's water shedding, but also our infrastructure, the backbone of this country, Transnet, has collapsed. Absolutely. It used to be the 3rd from the bottom. Now it's simply just not functioning. I'm not even talking about Richards Bay coals terminals. So the mining industry probably lose about 200 billion a month when they can produce these goods, but they are not able to take them to where they are needed.
Professor,
this is the 3rd commodity boom that we are missing.
Professor, I thought you were going to come with good news, and you're just painting an even bleaker, picture of what we are faced with. But I suppose this is the reality that we need to deal with, and that is why such talks at, like Davos is very important. Look, let's talk about another aspect of Davos. Look, we've just had record-breaking matric results since the dawn of democracy, and according to your op-ed, the quality of education in this country is still far from acceptable. 80% of pupils cannot read for meaning. Let's talk about that debate. The debate around skills development and training. We have scores of unemployed graduates. So talk to us about that. How did Davos come up with solutions on how to integrate skills, on how you can actually structure courses as well as curriculums to ensure that students do not suffer after tertiary level, even in fact from primary school basis, that they are taught the necessary skills so that they're not sitting outside of varsity and unemployed?
But you see, we go to Davos not to get the solutions. We go to Davos to share with the world our own solutions. Because if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to create our own new world. I think being an election year for us, one of 50 in the world, 15 of whom are in Africa, including us. This is a quarter of the 8 billion population that is going to elections. Therefore, it gives us an opportunity as ordinary South Africans, where we have an opportunity to vote for a party, but also an individual, for the first time in our 30-year democracy, to insist on no more than just 5 things. Number 1 on that list has to be transformation. Unsexy as it sounds, because this economy must look like us. It has to be about ethical leadership. It has to be about good governance. It has to be about service delivery, because that's what politicians are paid to do.
And also to deliver on their promises, Prof.
Exactly.
And prioritize the needs of the society and the people that actually put them in power.
You have hit the nail on the head. But also it's about law and order, safety and security.
Absolutely.
Because without law and order, safety and security, who are we? So coming to the matric results, I think about this way. A country that chooses to make English compulsory and agriculture optional will produce citizens that speak English fluently on an empty stomach. Therefore, we need to think about what are the 3-4 things that our people need. The 60.02 million South Africans.
Skills.
Half of them, that's 30 million people, live below the poverty datum line, which is defined as less than 800 rand combined household income. 10 million young people are outside of employment. How does it manifest? I think inequality is growing. Racism is at an all-time high. It is public education that has collapsed. It is black graduates that are roaming the streets hopelessly. Public health care continue to fail the poor and the vulnerable. It is crucial infrastructure that we inherited from people who don't even like us that is laying barren. And again, lawlessness has now become an epidemic. So we need to take education seriously, because that's the surest way in which one can transcend social classes. Born poor in Alexander, 23 years of hard work and application, you are able to afford a house in the leafy suburbs of Bryanston.
Professor, look, in parting, what are the good news that South African can look forward to? I mean, after this forum, we're currently a stressed, over-indebted a nation. We are literally basically overburdened with no solutions that are coming likely from the people that we need them to come from.
So the first lesson for me is we saw the ascendancy of India. It has the same population as us, 1.4 billion people. But it's one prime minister, one set of legislative framework. We have 55 African countries, 54 of whom are absolutely sovereign. We have 46 different jurisdictions. And how can we stop talking about just South Africa and talk about regional integration, regional tourism? Number 2, we have seen the United States of America losing its moral high ground. But China brought the biggest delegation in the history of Davos at the time that the Americans are reducing theirs. These are the people that plan for the next 100 years. So we don't know why, but it will be clear in another 10 years or so. Lastly, I think as South Africans, we should go there as leaders, not to come back with no's, but to look around and say practically, what is it that I can do? Because our constitution is the best in the world, not because of what is contained in the 198 sections of the main body of the Constitution. It's the best because of just this one pager, the preamble. And it starts with we the people, not the politicians. And it says recognizing the past injustices. In the middle, it both implores and mandates Nhlanhla and Bonang to solve these problems. It's the best in the world because it rests on these three pillars. Number one is this notion of a constitutional democracy. Of these countries that are going to elections every 5 years, not all of them are democracies.
True.
The second, it's social justice, because equality is not justice. The last one is this notion of fundamental human rights, the 30 of them enshrined in the UN Charter. Freedom of speech, freedom of association. But the one that is less sexy is freedom from hunger.
Prof, you've just put it in very nice, unsexy words there, but I suppose it's a sound reality that everybody needs to get accustomed to. Professor, thank you so much for your time. That is Professor Bonang Mohale there, the Chancellor of the Free State University and Professor of Practice at the Johannesburg Business School, in studio with us with some great analysis of the recently concluded World Economic Forum.